Hey everybody, welcome to Forge It. This week I wanted to go through and just spend a little bit of time on the tools that you do really need to get into blacksmithing. I know it's a super long list of tools that you see in videos, people making things all the time, but that just gets expensive and it's really not necessities to be able to get moving and just start playing. So let's dive right into my first tools, the necessities, and then I'll spend a little bit of time on the nice to haves, things that I've made for myself, that kind of thing as we get further into it. Let's go ahead and get moving. Okay guys, so the first thing I wanted to cover is going to be a hammer. And you can go out and you could buy a blacksmith hammer. Typically these are going to be something that somebody else is going to be forging. I've seen them as low as about $100 and they can go up from there depending on who's making it. But you really don't need to spend that kind of money to get moving into this. I do want to highlight my first hammer. So this is just going to be a Harbor Freight 4-pound engineer hammer. Super simple, does the job. One thing that you do want to make sure that you do, they had some pretty harsh edges on the heads here, and I just came through with a flapper disc on an angle grinder, and then if you can see here, I went around and rounded those up just to prevent leaving excess marks in what we're making, what we're forging in that process. I think this was about $9 at Harbor Freight, and it really just, about the first 2 months of blacksmithing, this is all that I used. Alongside of that one, we do have this guy right here, the crossbeam. Same thing, just make sure that you smooth over the head on this. We want to try to prevent leaving marks, excess marks in our forge work as much as possible. And the same thing, just with that flapper disc on an angle grinder, I was able to clean that up without too much problems there. Okay, so we've covered hammers, being able to hit our hot metal, but then how do you hold it? First time around, just using a pair of vice grips, again, Harbor Freight buy. I got a pair of short ones, and then I found a pair of longer ones, which are nice for getting into the forges, a little bit deeper, that kind of thing. Great success with both of these. They've done what they needed to do. They still come in handy once in a while, but we'll get you moving enough to be able to actually start forging things. From the vice grips, I was actually able to make my first pair of tongs. They're not pretty, but they do the job, and I use them all the time. Next up on the list, we're going to talk about anvils. So I got this guy right here. It's just the Amazon 66-pound anvil, nothing fancy. You could also get it off eBay. I think it was like $140. It does the job. This is one of the purchases that I made before digging into this, and I mean I use this all the time and I'm glad that I have it, but definitely after digging into this a little bit more, I've realized that you can go down to the metal scrapyard and for 25 or 30 cents a pound, you can find a nice heavy 3 or 4 inch wide, ideally probably 6 or 8 inches long, probably 4 or 6 inches thick, just a piece of scrap steel, and that would do just the same as what this actual anvil is going to do. So just keep that in mind. You don't need to come out and spend big money out of pocket to get into this. You really can just go to the scrapyard and find something and make it work. Now let's talk about the actual forge. If you're going to spend some money at all in this project, this is probably where you need to spend it, just because the forge, without it holding up and doing its job, you can't heat up the metal to actually do what you're trying to do. So you got two options here. You can go with propane or you can go with coal. I opted to go with propane just for the ease of, on my personal side, finding the fuel, and then the setup seemed to be the easiest for me. But super simple idea. Let me go ahead and open this up a little bit. I'm actually going to bring you over here so we can actually see inside. Okay. Super simple situation here. As you see, it's just going to be a box out of fire bricks all the way around here, top, sides, bottom, and a back. I wound up getting these fire bricks from Tractor Supply. They had 2 of them for $5. You can find them on Amazon, but they're super expensive. And then I welded up a top frame and a bottom frame and a pair of legs, put some tabs on it with some threaded rod here just to hold everything together for me so that it's not shifting around. And then if we look up here at the actual burner, super simple. This is a 1.5 to 3/4 reducer up here that I drilled and tapped to set some set screws into. We have an 8-inch piece of gas pipe here, a coupler going into just a, if I remember right, that's a 2-inch long, just another piece of gas pipe that's welded to the actual frame of the forge to hold everything in place. And then inside, I'm not sure if you can see that, but right here is going to be a 1.25 to 3/4 reducer on the bottom. This is actually going to be the piece that holds the flame and keeps it from blowing out on you. Outside of that, if we look down in the top, there's a couple more brass fittings in there. That's going to be our actual nozzle. I'd be happy to dive into that a little bit more as far as what's going on with that. And we have our valve for turning the propane on and off. From there, we're just going to need, obviously, propane hose. And then if you look here, I just have a regulator. One thing to keep in mind on the regulator, a regular propane regulator for a grill will not function for this. It doesn't give you enough PSI. This is going to be a 30 PSI gas regulator here. Okay, so I feel like we've covered the essentials so far. So let's talk about some of the nice to haves tools that are going to help you getting into blacksmithing. First one up on my list is going to be a chisel. You can absolutely make these. I don't have one. Yes, I do. So one of my first actual projects was making my own chisel. And if we can see here, it ain't the prettiest thing in the world. It's covered in pollen. We're in North Carolina, so it's that time of year right now. But it was fun to play with. This does work. My one big thing about it is it doesn't get my hand far enough away from the material, and that's my fault for when I made it. One of the trips, again, back to Harbor Freight, I went ahead and just picked myself up this guy. Good distance, my hand to get off the material. And I think this was $4. And until I go through and actually make myself another chisel, it's something that I can use to get my hand further away from the material. Next up is going to be your touch mark. You're going to go through and spend the time making something. You want to be able to make it your own and leave your mark on it. You can absolutely go through and custom order your own touch mark. I went ahead and I just picked up some 3/4 inch or 3/4 square bar and a Dremel, and it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but I'm not sure if you can see that there, but I went ahead and put my touch mark in there. So now, whenever I'm going through and making something, I can actually put my own touch mark on what I'm making. The next up for a nice to have, in my mind, would be my new hammer, and this thing is my baby. So this is going to be a rounding hammer. If we look a little bit closer here, if you look at the head on this side, very good for being able to actually come in and put forces in a specific spot on the metal, and you're drastically reducing the amount of surface area, which means you're putting more force into your metal. Still playing with it, still getting used to it, but I absolutely love this thing. Shout out to Old Hickory Forge. I got this from them. They're up in Hickory, North Carolina, and I absolutely love this thing. So next up, let's talk about once you've gone through the process of actually finishing your first project, how do you go ahead and seal that and keep it from just deteriorating to the elements and making sure that's actually going to last? You got a bunch of options out there. The two that I've spent some time with playing are going to be beeswax, and which I have right here. Just get the metal hot, wipe this on. You want it smoking just a little bit. Just keep in mind you're going to want to wipe off the excess once it has a little bit to soak into the metal, to prevent it from getting kind of a tacky surface to it. Does a great job, and this is also going to be what's going to give you that black finish on your forged work once it's all said and done. The next up is going to be boiled linseed oil. Home Depot, Walmart, pretty much any place that's going to have a paint section, you're going to be able to find this. Same kind of deal as the beeswax, but instead of, if you still want the metal, the project warm to be able to apply this, but instead of having to actually wipe on a block of beeswax and melt that in, you can actually just go ahead and brush this on with a rag or a brush. Same situation, you want to let it soak in, but wipe off the excess. Okay guys, well that's all for me this week. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to throw them right below in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I look forward to throwing up the next video next week for you.